Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric King 3. Who's Nintendo is suing or screwing this week, and we got some really interesting and honestly pretty hilarious updates to the Palworld lawsuit, because Nintendo's basically going into their own patents and changing the rules midstream, because they've realized now that Palworld and Pocketpair have a very strong defense, so Nintendo's basically just trying to act like a child, changing the rules to the game midstream, because they're getting bummed out that they're probably going to lose. For get far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But from the beginning of this story that I started covering the minute that the lawsuit went out, Nintendo is basically trying to sue Pocketpair and Palworld for using mechanics that they say they've patented. We've discussed this at length and it is on the playlist you see down below, that basically what Nintendo's doing here is trying to patent the most vague examples of gameplay you could imagine, throwing a ball into a game space and affecting the playfield around it, and then gliding on characters are basically how you use your mounts. There's been so many different examples of prior art before Nintendo even got these patents, and it really does seem like Nintendo is just trying to be punitive against Pocketpair and any other developer out there that might think about making a game that's too close to something Nintendo considers one of their bread and butter genres. This is basically Nintendo saying, we don't want you to go out there and make a Pokemon style game because we quote unquote own that concept of gameplay, which absolutely in the worst ways possible is going to stifle creativity moving forward, because at least Pocketpair has the money to be able to defend against this, and honestly at this point in time seems like they have near to a slam dunk case of actually winning against Nintendo. But think of all of the developers out there that don't have hundreds of millions of dollars plus in the bank. Nintendo's basically saying to them, we will come after you if you compete with us, even if that competition would be free and clear. It's one of those things Nintendo just wants you to think it's such a risk of getting sued you won't try it in the first place, because honestly, we've discussed before, throwing a ball into a playfield is absolutely one of the most vague gameplay concepts around, and now I think Nintendo's lawyers in Japan are discovering that exact same fact, because they've gone in and actually changed the wording of their patents to try to make it quote unquote easier to actually beat Pocketpair. And if you're wondering how a company can just go in and change their patents midstream and then use that in a lawsuit, you're not alone. It's something you can do, but honestly, at least as a logical level thing, it seems absolutely insane that anyone is allowed to do that. But if we take a look at the articles coming out, and we'll go over the actual patents as well, basically what Nintendo's lawyers did is they refiled amendments to the patents in Japan while also trying to get more patents in the United States, and they changed the wording basically to try to strengthen their case against Palworld. Now again, it is a very weird thing to go in and amend patents midstream, and it basically is going to be a bad look. What they're signaling is they don't think that their actual case is strong enough to win on the merits of what they initially filed, so now they're basically going in and, as I said earlier, acting like a petulant child and trying to change the rules of the game midstream. That way they can try to get themselves to be more successful, because basically if this doesn't work, Nintendo's patents could be invalidated, and they should be, because they are so incredibly vague. And as we went through previous videos as well, Palworld has an extremely strong defense. Not only are there other games that have used these mechanics before Nintendo patented them, but Palworld honestly showed some of the mount and gliding and riding mechanics in preview videos for Palworld before Nintendo honestly got the patents for themselves. So it's going to be really easy in court to say, we did it before Nintendo filed the patents. You can see it here in our actual preview videos. Therefore, Nintendo should have been granted the patents. It was not novel or unique, and we should win this case. So basically what Nintendo's going in and doing is trying to just make an end run around all those arguments, try to change the language of their patents so they'll have another defense. It is absolutely one of the wildest things you're going to hear. Changing the rules midstream should not be allowed, but honestly it is. And here's an article from May 15th as well, where they talk about the fact that Pocketpair developers for Palworld showed off the gliding mechanic exactly 6 months prior to Nintendo's original patent. I'm sure Nintendo saw that and decided we better get that patent in before anyone else does, because it is something we want to save for ourselves. So basically Nintendo's just seeing what other competitors are doing that are successful, and then filing patents to try to stifle their actual market inroads against Nintendo into themselves, because this really is, and it's pretty obvious at this point in time, all about money for Nintendo. They don't think that other companies should be able to compete with them in certain genres, but just think to yourself how incredibly bad it would be for the hobby and medium as a whole if Nintendo was to win this case and Pocketpair was to lose. It would basically set a precedent, at least in developers' minds, that you can't do anything that is too similar to Nintendo, or you're risking a lawsuit, and even if that lawsuit on the patents is flimsy at best and absolutely stupid at worst, you could still lose. You could end up losing money and a bunch of other time and progress. But again, even on that overall throwing a ball into the playfield mechanic, we've talked about other games and mods that have shown that exact same thing before Nintendo was actually granted those patents. So again, if Nintendo was able to win, it would basically say it doesn't matter who did it first, so long as Nintendo can get that patent filed somewhere, they're going to sue the ever-loving crap out of you and try to ruin your game. And that again is just going to stifle innovation and creativity in gaming, because honestly, gliding around on a PAL in Palworld, it really isn't all that novel of an actual concept. Flying on a mount, riding an animal in video games has been something that's been done since basically the beginning of gaming in and of itself, and even though patents can get granular of exactly how it works, think of it this way: if Nintendo wins this, you're not going to be riding animals or gliding on them in any other games in the future. Nintendo's basically going to own that as a concept, and because they don't want to lose that as something that they can only use in theory, that's why they're changing around the wording to the patent. Now, I will leave a link below to the actual patent and how it's been amended, as well as this article, so you can read it. But again, going in and changing this is not something that is regularly done. You can amend a patent if you actually want to expand upon it from the parent patent. That actual first patent is always going to be the umbrella to improve upon things, and I have worked in patent law and filing patents for previous employers as far as actually getting things done, and even though there's never been a lawsuit against them, this again is absolutely out of the norm for something that you would actually do. And hopefully the judge in Japan looks at this thing and thinks to himself, you're basically trying to change the rules, you know you have a weak case, and changing the patent here is just basically signaling that it is a very bad look. And honestly, Nintendo is tipping their entire hand and showing their cards when they do stuff like this. I'm sure Pocketpair's lawyers absolutely love stuff like this, because again, they have multiple examples of previous art, and all that means is previous examples of these patents, at least in concept form, being used in other games. And that means that Nintendo should not have been granted the patent because it was not a novel or unique concept. To obtain a patent, you need to be the person that does it first, and you need to prove that no one else has done it. Therefore, you would be getting that patent granted. Even in Palworld's original games Craftopia, you see a lot of these actual things happening before they even got to Palworld. So basically, Palworld's lawyers are going to go in and show the judge, here's a dozen good examples of these two patents and their mechanics being used not only in our games, but in other games before Nintendo actually ever used it and patented it. Therefore, the patents are invalidated. Therefore, the case is dismissed and cannot be brought again. And that's really what Nintendo is fighting against here. They want these patents because they're going to abuse them and stifle innovation in actual gaming creativity. And if they lose the patents, they're basically going to be screwed and not be able to try to keep competitors down. Because I can't stress enough, that is what Nintendo is doing here. This isn't about throwing a ball. This isn't about riding an animal. This is about trying to protect their investments and make sure they're the only ones that make the money. And talk about a very Nintendo thing to do, but again, this is going to basically be game set match, even with that patent being amended, at least in my opinion, because if you go to court, Nintendo says you stole our idea and patent, and all Palworld's lawyers do is show a video saying here it is 6 months before you ever filed the patent for it, therefore you should have not been granted it. I can't imagine a judge in any jurisdiction that's playing it fair that would actually end up finding for Nintendo in this instance, and if they did, and I'm not 100% clear on Japanese appellate law, I can only imagine that Pocketpair's lawyers would appeal this to a higher court, because the finding for Nintendo, based upon all of these prior art defenses that Pocketpair and Palworld were putting up, along with the fact that Nintendo is now trying to amend their patents to make it easier to win, it just doesn't seem like Nintendo has a winning case here whatsoever. It seems like maybe they thought they could do what they normally do with emulation authors and different lawsuits they have, basically be the person with the biggest pocketbook when they show up to court and make a developer stop doing something they didn't want them to do, based simply upon the idea of having to spend too much time and money on the lawsuit. But when they went up against Pocketpair and sued them for patent infringement, I think that Nintendo didn't ever actually expect for this strong of a defense. Who knows, maybe Nintendo's own lawyers didn't really research a lot of this prior art, or maybe somebody at Nintendo just thinks, well, when we do it, it's actually unique and novel, even if other people have done it first, because we're Nintendo and we're the ones that create, these other people don't deserve it. Because trust me, in the business world out there, there's a lot of wrong think and a lot of stupid ideas in people's heads as to what they think they're allowed to do and other people aren't. And this is an instance you're seeing with Pocketpair versus Nintendo. Nintendo's taking super vague ideas, changing the patents along the way when it's not going their way, and basically trying to say, we're the only ones that can throw a ball into a playfield, and we're the only ones that can let you ride an animal in a game. It's 10 out of 10 dumb. Hopefully Nintendo loses, but we'll have to wait and see. But we're done. I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.